Chris Chinn, thanks for being here, and really a pleasure to see you. So I'm really interested in your theater acting, your theater career in on stage, in TV, and in film. So I was wondering if you could tell me how you got there. How did you
Uh,
become an actor? What were the influences in your life?
right. So I'm from Hawaii originally, and acting really didn't appeal to me. I kind of came into it a little late at around in my 20s because I had a really bad lisp when I was growing up. So I really didn't want to talk. But I started modeling in Hawaii. I did a lot of print work. And then I started getting commercial work where you had to actually open your mouth. And I thought, well, maybe I should take an acting class. And I took an acting class with Dick Kindleon, who used to be the head casting director of the original Hawaii Five-O in the 70s. And I got hooked. I got the acting bug. I went to LA for a year, which was a learning experience. And then I came to New York. I think anyone that's truly serious about acting should live in New York and study and train here. And I did, starting in 1989. And I studied at HB Studios. I was very lucky. I got a play that first year. I was here up in Cape Cod, which they used to call Summer Stock. And it was a wonderful play, and I was in a beautiful place doing that. Um, anyway, long story short, I went back to LA for about 5 years, and did my thing there. And then I came back to New York in 1998. But I'd say that I started my acting career here in New York in 1989. And so I'm glad I came to New York because it really made me focus and grow, not just training in acting, but just living life, as you know, in New York City. You either grow quickly or you don't. And I love New York. New York is home now. So.
Yeah, I like to tell people that living in New York has made me more of a courteous person because you just have to be aware of people around you. You have to have a lot of situational awareness.
Right.
And I just was reading something that people in New York are not friendly, but they're kind. So there's a little, seeming contradiction. What's been your experience fitting in, coming from Hawaii, LA, and
Right.
now New York?
Yes, because many times it makes me not want to be around people, which I know it sounds weird, but living in New York, sometimes you just want that quiet space. Interesting that I've chosen to live in one of the busiest cities, but you do grow. I mean, you either make the choice to grow or not. And like you said, it does either make you more compassionate and kinder or not. And I choose to be more compassionate, no matter how difficult some of those days are, the minute you step out the door in New York, but it forces you to grow. And that I love, as opposed to New York, like the movie like Crash, where you literally get in your glass and steal, you go and be around who you want to be, and you never need to mingle or be more tolerant of people that you might not choose to be around. And I think there's something to be said about that, and that is a huge aspect about what I love about New York is the diversity, and you know you have to deal with all kinds of people, and I think that's great. I think the thing about acting is that whatever experience you have in life, you bring to your acting, and especially with the SP work. So yeah, no, New York is home. The transition from Hawaii to New York. I mean, when I came here in the late '80s, so it was pretty edgy. It was the New York that people saw in the movies and TV, which is I'm glad I got to experience that because that's not in New York anymore. I knew what 42nd Street used to be like before Disney. I lived in Little Italy when Gotti. I passed Gotti every day. I lived on the same block as Martin Scorsese's mom. It was an amazing experience. I'm glad I got to experience that old school New York, and it did make me grow. It made me grow very quickly. So, being from Hawaii, we all went to work on the plantations, our ancestors. So my great great grandfather came from China. My great grandmother came from Japan. So I'm Japanese, Chinese, Hawaiian, and Spanish. I have Hawaiian roots. I'm indigenous. I actually went to school where you need to be part Hawaiian, Kamehameha. They're actually trying to fight that now, which is ridiculous. But back in the 1800s, a princess, Princess Pauahi, knew that the Hawaiian children probably would not get a good education. And she started Kamehameha schools. and it is one of the top schools in Hawaii, but I think even in the nation. Our rival was Punahou, where Barack Obama went to. So, um, yeah, so Japanese, Chinese, Hawaiian, Spanish. That's not uncommon in Hawaii. I guess everybody kind of jumped the fence. It's the most diverse community, and it is one of the few areas in the United States where, or maybe the only one, where people of color are not minorities and have not been for years.
I guess I was wondering if that ever not stigmatized you, but kept you from certain roles that you wanted. Did people stereotype you? And you have this look. It's really difficult to tell, how to fit you in. I can imagine you could play many different types of individuals. But have you ever felt that that's the background has been an advantage, or has it been a disadvantage at times?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll be really honest, Tony. Now you do see Asian American leading men. And when I was first starting out in the late '80s, you didn't. I mean, that was you did it was unheard of, and yet there were a lot of people that were possible. People like Russell Wong and Jason Scott Lee, who did. They had their moments, but it didn't last long because it was not something that I guess the powers that be thought that was something people wanted to see, and that has changed. But I like to think that we were there sort of pounding on the door at the beginning. The very beginning, a lot of things that I went out for had to have an accent, and obviously I do not have an accent. And then my look. I mean, my look actually for me worked against me because I, um, I guess, came across as either threatening or they didn't know how to place me. I wasn't nerdy or goofy enough. I didn't do martial arts. So it's a very strange thing as an actor because I don't put myself in a box. I have always thought of myself as a character actor. When I was in LA and I'd have Q&As and the other people on the panel were like, they were working actors. They're making films. They were starring in films and we'd do the Q&A and people would ask, well, how do your parents feel about you? And they'd be like, well, they're waiting for me to become a doctor, get a real job. I'm like, you just did like the number one movie in America. And I'm like going, well, my parents are incredibly supportive. I did a play, was my dream role in Butterfly in Monterey when I lived in LA. And my parents flew from Hawaii to come and see it. So they've always been very supportive. They both passed away.
Are you in any productions at the present moment?
I am not. I'm waiting for the next thing.
Hmm.
Last year, I was in a whole bunch of readings. One reading that I'm really proud of is called Thursdays Come at Morning. We did a reading here, a couple of readings in the city. We did one at New Jersey Rep. And it's a beautiful play. It's a two-hander. And it's about love and loss. It's about two men who meet in a cemetery. One is visiting his mother who passed away. One's visiting his husband. And I lost my partner 3 years ago. We were together for 24 years. And I caregave for him and I caregave for my dad. So the play, um, I don't know how it found me, but it was like almost written for me, really. And it's a beautiful place. So I hope it has a future somewhere. Definitely belongs off Broadway.
You're also a standardized patient, a simulated patient, and I'm interested in how you got involved in that work.
You know what, Tony? It's really funny. I've been acting for 36 years, and there's a lot of side gigs that we do as actors. I'd never heard of SP work. I never watched Seinfeld, so I didn't know about the gonorrhea episode. So I had no idea. But one of my good friends, actually, you probably know Tom Cahill, um, had said, Chris, you should do this work. And this was after Frankie passed. So Frankie was my partner. I spent 8.5 months in the hospitals every single day advocating for Frankie every day. I didn't sit there and hold his hand. I advocated. Sometimes I had to yell at people. Talk to patient reps a lot. It wasn't difficult or stressful because you do what you have to do when you love somebody, but it was a lot. I learned a lot about the healthcare system and the workers that should be in it and people that really should not. Um, so when Tom told me about this, he goes, this is really perfect for you. And I go, well, what is it? And then I interviewed and I first started at Einstein. So I onboarded in 1 year. I'm fairly new to SP work. It's only been going on about a year and a half now. But in 1 year last year, I onboarded at Einstein, NYU, Columbia, and SUNY. And I feel very fortunate. And I take the work incredibly seriously. I don't even treat it as an actor. I treat it as a human being. I'm hoping that it's my small way of the betterment of our future healthcare workers. So.
I'm interested in what you said about caring for your partner, Frankie, and how that helped you to understand the healthcare system. What were your observations at that time?
Wow, we're not going to have enough time, but it was a lot. And he moved he never made it back home. It's very difficult when someone's sick to have to advocate and fight for themselves. So I felt honored. I was lucky that I got to do that for him because it does take a lot of energy, and it sometimes, like I said, takes. Hate to say it, but yelling at people. I had to, it was very. If people walked in the room, well, this is the thing, Tony. I got so good that after about the first month, and I always asked everybody's name, whoever walked in that room, whether they're a transport, bringing the meal, or the nurse, whether they cared or not. I always got a name. And for me, I learned that 50% of the people that were in any part of healthcare were really wonderful and were caring for their patients. And the other half were just picking up a paycheck and should not. They couldn't care less. They should not be there. I talked to a lot of patient reps. I dealt with everyone, doctors, nurses, of course, surgeons. In my experience, residents were the most difficult to deal with. And I get that they have long hours and I get where they are in their careers, but it was an incredibly learning experience. How they treated not only Frankie, because if they didn't treat him with respect, they were out of the room. They were out of the room. And people don't realize that you have the right as a patient to not have anyone in that room that you don't want in that room, including surgeons. And I would tell them that because I wanted to make sure he was being cared for. So I also did everything a nurse would do. I wasn't going to wait till they turned him. So sometimes I turned Frankie 3 times a day. I cleaned his stage 4 pressure wound and cleaned it better than some of the nurses because that's how much I wanted to make sure he was okay. Did PT. Anyway, it's a long story. Did PT with him in bed, fed him, made sure he had his meds. I just did everything. I was an advocate.
So I can imagine that you would be a great candidate to play a physician or a nurse or someone in healthcare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And that's why the SP work is so important to me. But there are some programs that actually they do have residents come back, and that's happened once or twice. And that to me is some of the most satisfying, especially with the verbal feedback, if they're actually listening. And when they do, or even when they're in their clerkships, um, it makes it very rewarding. I like to think that I'm, hopefully adding to the betterment of our health, future healthcare workers. So.
But I'm wondering how you bring your experience, both as an actor and as a person and a partner who went through this experience in the hospital, really immersive experience, and how you bring that into SP work.
So the experience is invaluable. That 8.5 months that I caregave for Frankie, that's just a core of who I am. I also caregave for my dad 3 months before that, but that's an even longer story. And that was in Hawaii. With acting, the tools that I've learned as an actor that I do apply in the OSCEs are really things that we learn. Not, I hate to say that they're basic, but they're the most important things that an actor can do to be in the moment completely, to be present, to listen, and to take in what the other person's giving you. Those 3 factors are the most valuable things as an actor that I apply in the SP work. Because I'm not acting, honestly, when I'm doing it. I'm not performing in any sense of the word. It's really a learning and teaching experience.
I wonder too about the issue of empathy. We often want SPs to evaluate the empathy level, of the medical students or whoever we're working with. Um, but I can imagine you also have a lot of empathy for the students themselves.
Absolutely, especially the first year. Um, yeah, because as an SP, you have to go in it incredibly open, not have any prejudgment the minute they walk in the door. And sometimes it's very difficult because, like I said, I knew the minute someone walked into Frankie's room, whether they cared or not. And I got to admit, that trait has stayed with me. It really has. But with the SP work, I understand that it is a learning process. And when they come in, it's being non-judgmental and just see where it goes. But more than the checklist, it's the verbal feedback. I value that the most because I'm right there with the learners and can just as kindly as possible explain to them how they made me feel as a patient. And they almost always get it. It's rarely that I see that they don't, even when it's been very difficult.
I think it's the most valuable part of SP work is the debriefing and feedback process that
Completely agree.
you
Yes,
give them. The simulations without that really don't have much learning value.
I agree.
And they really want to hear, I think from the patients, from the SPs, um, something about how they were experienced.
Exactly. And it's so funny because sometimes they will say, and it tends to be in their clerkship. It's really that first year learners say this, but they're like, well, and I know they're already out there. And they'll say, well, in the real world, or when we do these, or I'm like, you know what? This is the real world. When I'm actually doing these, and I've told them this, I said, I don't look at it as an actor. I'm not performing for you. I'm not even an SP. I'm a human being with feelings. And I'm sharing with you how me as a patient how you made me feel. And it's all a learning experience. I learn from them. I tell them that all the time. I say, look, I also learn from you guys. We're here to learn. But the more you treat this seriously, like the minute you walk in, and I can kind of tell at this point when they're not taking it seriously or whatever. I You're going to get more out of it.
I think it's one thing that's important for them to understand is that they're going to have to do a fair amount of acting as doctors. There may be times when you meet a patient you really don't like. You're going to have to act as if you really care for someone. Is that, I don't know if you agree with that or not, this idea that you need to
Um,
act.
I don't know if acting is the right thing. I wouldn't want anyone to, I just want people to be honest, just be truthful, even if it's difficult. I know as an advocate, I was difficult. I would have seemingly come across as difficult, but I was not because Frankie wasn't being treated right and I wasn't being treated right. So I have a right to be angry. Um, yes, but when they are dealing with patients that might be difficult, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, Tony. I would hope people wouldn't act. It's like in real life, you just have to deal with it and try to deal with it as with as much humanity as you possibly can, especially in that setting. I get what they're doing is not easy, especially if you're bringing somebody bad news. But I had so many experiences in those 8.5 months and things that were really unpleasant. Um, and I spoke up, but a lot of patients don't. A lot of patients. So this is the opportunity with the SPs. We're going to tell you how you made us feel. You're not going to get that a lot of times. They're never. Most times, patients are too afraid to tell you what they're feeling, or if they're upset or afraid. This is the opportunity to learn from that. You know. Um, so I hope that answers your question. I don't I definitely wouldn't want, and you know what? As me as being an actor and having the experience I had, I would see through anybody acting. I just want people to be truthful, and it's not easy.
How do you be truthful with a patient when you don't have a lot of experience and you're scared to death? Um, especially I think if you're starting your clerkships or even when you're suddenly thrust into the role of being a doctor, first year of residency.
Right.
How do you be honest about how you feel uh, when you're confronting with patients who have real needs? What do you think?
Well, I don't think it should ever be about the other person's feelings. I mean, the focus should be on the patient, first of all. That's how I feel. Second of all, how about the simple, I don't know? I don't know. You know what? When residents or doctors told me that, and doctors really said that actually, I was blown away, and I stop them, and I do it even during the. I don't stop them during the Oskies, but I tell them at the end. I said, "You know what? You understand? You said something during the interview, and you were so incredibly honest, and you just said, I don't know." And I know that some preceptors and faculty would completely disagree with me on that, but I'm saying how I feel as an SP and as a patient. That's honesty. They don't know, and that's okay with me. This is for me as an SP, me as a patient, going, I respect that. You don't know. And some people don't, they're not capable of saying that. A lot of people aren't capable of saying, I'm sorry. Those three small words, I'm sorry, I don't know, I was wrong.
I sometimes wish that medical education was more focused on confusion than certainty. The I don't know. Therefore, I have to ask you some questions because I don't know you, and you
Right,
need to educate me about who you are, especially those that don't have a lot of patient experience. Where are they going to learn about patients except from the patients
right.
in terms of just how they're experiencing what they're going through? So I completely agree. This idea of admitting, I don't know, but you need to help me to understand more so that I can work with you, treat you more
Yeah,
effectively.
absolutely. It is an absolute skill. And I get that they're dealing with so much. You're dealing with the actual skill of the things you need to know medically, but also the skill of communications, of dealing with human beings that are in incredibly scary situations. It is an absolute skill. Honestly, I don't, if I wasn't an actor, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. But because we're actors, that's what we deal with. We deal with human behavior and humanity and empathy. That's what we do. So for actors, I think maybe that's why they use actors as SPs, because we have that in us. Well, hopefully we do. Humanity and compassion.
I think that through this process that you're talking about, being honest with the students, telling them, what your experience is, and also trying to understand them, their perspective is a form of empathy. I don't know how students are going to learn empathy unless they're shown empathy by people like you,
True. That's very true. Yeah.
by standardized patients as well as their preceptors.
Right. And because many of them are so young, they haven't really had so much life experience. It's really interesting. Every now and then, and they're first year medical students, and they're exceptional. And almost always, I'll ask the preceptor, I have to go, wow. And they go, they care gave. They either care gave for a loved one, or they had someone, they've had loss.
Chris, I never put something together that you brought up, and this has to do with your experience caring for Frankie. I had a brother, Frank. He was in a car accident. I was 3 years old. He was 7. I was there. He was run over by a car.
Oh, gosh.
Um, Suffered, had plastic surgery for the rest of his life on his face, and died young. He never really got over it.
Wow.
But also that experience of watching my mother caregive him, taking the bandages off. I mean, she died young because of it. I'm convinced she died pretty young. But me watching this, accompanying them to doctor's visits, watching people look at him bandaged up or with his scarred face, it really I never really took in how this impacted me until now in this work that I do, with you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah. And I've noticed that when, you know, first year students or the learners have an exceptional amount of empathy and understanding and awareness, it's because they've already lived it. And the others that have not, well, they will. Um, but yeah, it always blows me away. It's like, wow, you've already caregiver, you've already had loss. And that you kind of can't teach, right? I mean, some people have natural empathy, but I think it's very rare. You know, People don't understand until they've gone through it. You know,
Tragedy, loss, suffering are great teachers. And I used to say to medical students, the good news is that you're young. Um, The bad news is that you're going to experience a lot of loss in your life. You're going to have death, divorces, whatever in your life, and that's going to make you a better person. So maybe that turns out to be good news. How do you bring your life experience into this important work and not become cynical by it? You know, it's been found that med students in their third year suffer a drop in empathy. This has been studied for some time now. I was wondering if
Interesting. Wow.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
But it's so interesting you said that because a lot of times in the clerkships, I noticed that they've forgotten all the things they learned in the first year. And sometimes that first year to me is almost the most important because they're so eager to learn and they want to learn. Where by the third year, sometimes not all can be overly confident. And it's like, oh, okay, try to get back to that first year. Try to get back to that.
I think you're right. It could be a phase. Hopefully, it's not a lifelong habit that you've learned, but it does remind me of children in who are naturally curious and creative, and that gets often stamped out through the process of their education. Education can make you, very perhaps conform to a system, and that creativity gets lost or it's not valued or something. And
Sure.
so
Yeah. And environment. I mean,
the
it depends
environment,
who
yeah.
they're, yeah, who are they surrounding with that, when they're in their clerkships and in residence and what kind of bad habits are they learning from others? I mean, we do that with every job, right? Every job, there are people that just, I'm sorry, they suck. They picked up really bad habits and shortcuts and bad attitudes, and they want everyone else to be like that. And it takes a solid foundation and knowing who you are to not buy into that.